For many years of my career, I've been what is colloquially referred to as an SME or subject matter expert. My particular specialty has been in the digital and content marketing realms, covering strategies and technologies. But if I can humble brag for a moment, I'm also pretty knowledgeable when it comes to abstract art creation, home repair, and some survival camping techniques as well. Now, on the other hand, it turns out there are some things I'm not so good at, including accounting best practices, NASCAR racing circuit, and the appeal of brutalist architecture. Now, the great news is there are all sorts of people in the world who are very knowledgeable about all sorts of things that I'm not. And together, we've been able to create an economy around hiring those people to take on tasks that we can't or don't want to do. Have a leaking water pipe that needs some TLC? Finding a qualified plumber isn't crazy hard. Need help organizing and filing your taxes? It's easy to find someone with money and number skills to help you out. Now, for the past 20 years or so, the way to find these people or to gain knowledge of a topic ourselves has been to reach out for a search engine and type in a query. The result most often is a listing of potential resources you could tap into that might possibly help you find an answer for your question. But during the past year and a half, those models have been shifting away from generating a potential list of resources we might peek into to instead using AI to home in on specific answers that best answer our specific questions. Now, because these AI tools allow us to ask these questions using a more natural and conversational language, the result we get back may also seem a little bit more generalized simply because the knowledge base that's being tapped into is, well, more generalized as well. So in short, the data only knows what it knows. Now, a few months ago, OpenAI started giving users access to the tools to make their own GPTs. Now, by the way, GPT stands for Generative Pre-trained Transformer. I know. But it refers to the ability to tap into a pool of data in order to come up with answers that best fit the questions. And while the standard ChatGPT model is a little more like working with a jack of all trades but master of none, being able to build our own GPTs means that we can also add unique data sources that turn our GPTs from generalists into specialists. Now, for example, if you were hiring someone to work for your business, you would most likely first put together a list of qualifications that you were looking for anyone who might be applying for the job. In that same way, we can mold GPTs to specialize in or have knowledge about certain things. Let me show you how we might approach this. Now, when we come into OpenAI, you will notice, again, if you're using one of the paid plus or enterprise versions, that you have an opportunity here to explore GPTs in the upper left-hand corner. And if we click on this, it will take us into basically the new catalog of GPTs that have been created by OpenAI and other folks just like you and me. And an opportunity to come in here and get a sense of different types of areas of exploration and what's trending. And we'll take a look at this in a couple of videos because there's some really cool things in here that I want to share. But generally, categories having to do with being able to be better at writing or productivity or research and analysis or some lifestyle tips and things like that. And some very, very interesting things that you can do from a top pick standpoint, personal color analysis, for example, whimsical diagrams and things that you can learn how to draw. There was even one here recently that allowed you to have a room escape game right here in the GPT. So some very cool things, but what we're more interested in is coming into the upper right-hand corner where we can either see our existing GPTs or create one. Let's create a brand new GPT. And in this scenario, I'm thinking I would like to have something that can help me do a better job of understanding something that, frankly, I'm not very good at, and that is tying knots. Now, I was a Boy Scout 1.5 million years ago, and frankly, I don't remember an awful lot about knot tying, so how cool would it be to create my own AI agent that might help me in that area? So I'm going to start by sharing with OpenAI what I'd like to have my agent specialize in. In this case, I'm going to put in some information down here into the GPT builder and say this GPT will offer instruction on how to tie common knots. There we go. Make sure everything's sort of spelled right. And then when I click on this, it's going to start to build in here. You can see I have a little wrench here. It's kind of cranking some information in here on how to tie common knots. And it's going to start asking me a few different questions on how I want to, what the next step I want for the construction of this GPT to be. Now, initially, it's going to try to say, how about we give this a name? We'll call this the GPT Knot Guide. How does that work for you? I'm going to say that is fine. Okay. So again, I'm able to speak in natural language, which is kind of fun here. So it's almost like I'm working with a friend or a colleague on building this thing out. And so now GPT is going to go in and try to build us an icon, something that will allow us to be able to have an identity here. If we put it in our catalog or if in our own collection of GPTs, it could stand out. So it says, I've created a hand-drawn style profile featuring a rope tied into a secure knot. Do you like it or would you like any changes? You know what? It's a little plain for what I'm looking for. I'm going to see, please change, because, you know, I'm always polite to the machines. You know, if they may remember you when they finally take over the world. And so we'll give it another opportunity to build out a profile picture for us and see what it comes up with. Maybe it's a little bit more what we're looking for. Then again, I don't really have any deep sense of what I'm expecting this to look like, so we're just going to give it an opportunity to play with a few variations. You know what? I don't like that one better, so I'm going to say use the previous version. All right, so let's say, all right, that didn't work for me. We will use the previous version. And so now it's, again, updating the GPT, and it's reverted to the previous version. And it's starting to say, okay, how do you want to fine-tune your knot guide's behavior? To start, what kind of language should it use when explaining how to tie knots? Should it be more formal, or would a friendly, more casual tone? I'm going to say use a casual but expert tone. We'll see if it understands that. And again, it's adding all these little things that we're adding in here to the GPT. And there's one last thing I'm going to want it to do. All right, got it. We'll choose is there anything else specific that should be emphasized or avoided in its responses? I'm going to say create a step-by-step walkthrough of each knot. Okay. So we're going to have a step-by-step. So instead of just coming in and casually just explaining it, I want a step-by-step so we can follow along a little bit at a time. All right, so here I want to put in, let's create an image that also shows the step-by-step of the knots being tied and see what it will do with that information. Again, it's going to build it into our current GPT builder. All right, so now it's telling us Knot Guide will provide both verbal and visual step-by-step instructions for tying knots. It's all set to assist users in learning knots effectively. Would you like to make any other adjustments, or is there anything else Knot Guide should be able to do? Well, you know what? I've kind of run the my full understanding of knots and knot tying already. Let's see if it can instruct us on how to do something. How do I tie a half hitch? I know a half hitch is a thing. I just don't necessarily know how to make one. So I'm going to test out my new AI agent, and it's going to start with some step-by-step. So, of course, we're going to start with a rope. That sounds pretty reasonable. Wrap the end, create the hitch, and then tighten. It says half hitches are basic but versatile and can be used alone or as part of the other knots for securing things. Would you like a visual guide for this knot? I'm going to say yes. How nice that it's asking us. And let's see what it does for us here. Okay, so, well, you know, it's kind of, we got 1, 3, 3, 5, 3, 8, and 8, 8, and nothing else. So at least, you know, the good news is that most of the hands here only have 5 fingers. Sometimes the illustrations that come out are a little extra generous on human fingers, but now, I suspect that I would need to actually try to tie a few knots to see how accurate this information is. Again, over time, with more use and feedback, the agent's going to be optimized over time and will get better at its job. With our knot building agent, we're simply tapping into the big pool of data that ChatGPT draws from in order to understand this topic. In the long run, that approach doesn't make our agent very unique, since anyone can easily replicate the agent we've just created. But what if we were able to create an agent that could do things that not everyone can do? For example, I've been writing articles and blog posts pertaining to digital and marketing and emerging tech for over 20 years now. As a result, I have over 600 articles that I can draw from in order to create a GPT that could write future articles, or at least get them started, so they sound like they were written by me in my voice. So to pull this off, I'm going to create a new GPT or AI agent, but this time I'm also going to educate it on how I write by sharing some of my writing samples with it. So to kick things off, let's tell it what we want this to do. Create an agent that will learn to write in the style of Spider Graham. All right, so that is the goal here. Now it's going to probably not understand a whole heck of a lot of what that means, but it's going to start building some things in here. And again, we'll go through the process of identifying this GPT and maybe giving it a lovely icon. They want to call it Spider Scribe. You know what? That's great. That's just great. We'll say, yep, let's do that. Spider Scribe it is. Let's come up with a profile picture. See what it's working on here. Well, not exactly what I had in mind, but hey, it works for our needs, and that's just fine. Now, what I'd really like to do here, of course, is I would like to teach it how to write the way that I write. So in order to do that, I'm going to start connecting to this agent some of my writing samples. Now, I've created a folder with PDFs of some of my past articles here. And if I were being truly scientific, I might comb through each and determine which one sounds the most like my voice, but I'm going to choose quantity over quality. And by the way, the number of resources you can connect to a GPT seems rather vague at this time. It does seem that it won't accept much more than 10 resources at a time, but those results have been inconsistent. Best as I've been able to determine, slow and steady works best here. So if I come in here and say, okay, I want to have this, and let's grab a chunk of these and say, okay, bring those in. So what it'll do now is it will take these PDF files and bring them into this GPT and incorporate them. And we'll start saying, this is what Spider sounds like. All right, so I can come down here, and again, I can say, please, because, just remember to be kind. Please use these files as examples of Spider Graham's writing style. And again, think of it, it's almost like if you were working with a friend or a colleague, how would you explain what you're doing step by step? So I'm not going to make any assumptions on what it's going to understand. I have to sometimes be a little bit more specific and tell it what to do. So it's looking through and it's incorporating some things into the knowledge. Okay, now that the articles have been added, I can test things out by asking my new GPT to write an article in my voice. So let's give it something to work with here. And we're going to say, write a 750 word article about AI uses in digital marketing. Something very general, but we can work with that. And again, I'm going to make sure I spell everything properly, not to confuse it. And let's see what happens here. Now, overall, this article seems to be informative, which is fine. But I'll be honest with you, it really doesn't sound like my voice. It sounds a little stiff, if I'm being honest. And I've never tried this, but I want to add, let's say, add writing characteristics, which includes sarcasm, spell that right, and snark from time to time. Yeah, I've been known to be sarcastic when I write things, but let's see if it understands even what I'm asking for here. I misspelled sarcasm. Well, we'll figure that out too. So it tells me it's added a dash of sarcasm and snark to Spider-Graham's repertoire, channeling Spider-Gram style with a wittier edge. Well, that's what I'm hoping for. I like to keep my readers entertained as much as possible, so we'll do that. So again, let me just give this a real quick try. All right, this time I'm going to ask it to write a 750-word article about using AI to create abstract art. How about that? See if we can get anything that sounds a little bit closer to my voice here. Well, I do like how it's writing it. Again, it's much more casual and conversational. It is putting a little bit of fun and wit into this. It's not going to necessarily understand my level of sarcasm or snark, I suppose, unless I train it accordingly. But I'm not unhappy with it. Again, if I were to compare this writing style, that if I went straight into ChatGPT and asked the same question, which would sound different? And my assumption is that we are making some changes here. There is something that's moving the needle. So in the future, this might be a good jumping off point for me to start my articles. And I'm going to be very frank. If I've ever used ChatGPT as a jumping off point, it's always been really to just give myself an idea of the framework, and then I go in and completely rewrite it in my own voice. But if this could save me some time and get us closer, I'll do it that way as well. Still, the point of creating a GPT is to increase its overall capabilities and to focus on an area of expertise. And I think we've managed to do that. By the way, in the future, we'll dive into GPTs even further by adding functionality that isn't part of a standard GPT set. Now, if you found this exploration interesting or useful, we'd love to share more with you in the future. So be sure to hit the subscribe button below, and especially hit the bell icon so you can be notified whenever a new video drops. That's all for this week. I'll share more AI marketing tips and tricks with you next time. Cheers.